Today I have a conversation with Grace Walker, who is an amazing designer and Webflow developer who's been able to 5x her income after leaving her job to freelance as a Webflow designer. She has an amazing story and I'm sure you'll have a lot to learn from. Let's jump right into the conversation. Hey Grace, what is up? I'm so excited to have you. Thank you for being on the channel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to talk with you.
So you're a super familiar face in the Webflow community and on Twitter in general. So I can do kind of like a big intro and hype you up. But how would you describe yourself and your business right now?
Yeah, I would describe myself. I'm a Webflow designer and developer. I specialize in marketing sites, working with small teams to bring big impact to their websites with something that is visually stunning and technically sound. I can't shut up about Webflow. That's why I'm all over Twitter. But yeah, that's pretty much me.
Amazing. Okay, so can you share a little bit how you got into design? I know you worked at companies before you went freelancing. How did you get into design?
Yeah, I have always loved art. When I was a student in high school, I loved my art class, but I was not someone who did well with wide open kind of requirements. I wanted to have set boundaries and do something within those boundaries. And so when I was starting to realize that, graphic design is a career, people do that, it was really, really appealing to me because it was still that creative aspect that I loved, but it was very purposeful. And so that gave me, I love efficiency and structure. And when I realized that graphic design was a career that I could do, I was like, oh, this just makes sense. It was kind of brought about by a few different things when I was still a student in high school, but I knew when I graduated that that's what I wanted to do.
So did you go to college to study design, or did you go to college and later decide, oh, you know what, I'm going to be a designer?
Yeah, no, I went to art school. So
Okay, that's cool.
right after high school, I took a gap year. I knew that I wanted to go into graphic design, but I was also 18 and I was a little bit restless. So I took a year off between high school and university. And then when I eventually went to university, I went to OCAD-U in Toronto, into their design program for graphic design. And I feel like taking that year off before I started studying was amazing because I just felt so ready to just do school. All I was focused on was being totally into all of my classes and being really engaged with that. So I loved it when I got to design school.
A lot of people nowadays, with the internet and everything, are kind of like either self-taught or they're doing, online classes and stuff like that. So what was school like for you? Like, how did you make the decision? Oh, I actually want to go to school for a while. And what did you
Yeah,
take
I think
away?
it
Like,
was,
was it worth it to you?
yeah, was it worth
I don't know.
it? Um, no, I think when I was deciding to go to university, that was just the standard choice that I was going to make. It
Yeah.
was kind of what was expected of me was to go to university. All of my friends, all of my peers, my brother, my family, everybody was university educated. And so that was kind of the standard choice around me, which what a wonderful standard.
Yeah.
So when I was trying to figure out what to do for school, I applied to a few different art schools and eventually chose OCAD in Toronto. My thought at the time was I'm in Canada. I'm not from Toronto. I'm from a place called Calgary. And my thought was, if I'm going to study design, I want to go to a large Canadian city where there's a big creative atmosphere, and hopefully that will set me up in the right way. Fast forward, I ended up really not liking Toronto.
Really, I was
And
there once and I actually liked it.
oh yeah, I loved school though. So making the choice to go there for school was amazing. I loved my classes. I did really well in them, and I think I also took it a little bit too seriously because it was art school. No one since has ever asked me how I did or any of my projects
Yeah,
or any of
I
that.
was going to
It
ask,
was
was this like, is this helpful? Do you feel like it's contributing to your success today?
I for a long time I didn't think so. For a long time I was like, there's so many people who are self-taught. They're doing such amazing work, and I still feel that way. Like I meet people every day, and especially within the Webflow community, who are self-taught or have had completely other careers before they've gotten into design and development, and they blow me away. Personally, like I'm so glad that I had that experience, and I don't think it did any harm. But I definitely think there's other routes I could have gone that would have led to a similar outcome. I was just really lucky that it was an opportunity for me and I could go and I enjoyed it. And it was like a really nice kind of middle time to explore. I had a professor actually in my third year of university. I was in an experimental typography class with him. And I'm like a very high strung person, and I think he could recognize that. And he said in one class, he was like, when you start working, you're never going to have an opportunity to do whatever you want. So right now, while you're in class, and it doesn't really matter, like
By
do
the
whatever
way,
you want. Yeah.
I can debate on that. I don't I've also heard that. I've also went to design school, and I've also heard that, and I find it not to be true. And actually kind of like discouraging. I mean, you can do self-initiated projects and experimental stuff later on as well.
Oh yeah. Like I am planning to do that next year a lot. I have done that a lot in the past few years, but I think like in that very rigid like advertising agency world, that was kind of true at the
Yeah,
time. And
yeah.
so I like having him say that and be like, nobody cares. Like do whatever you want. If you want to do a project that's totally different than the assignment, like it doesn't matter. And that was like such a good moment for me to realize like I didn't have to be taking this so seriously.
So you went out of school and kind of got the traditional kind of like 9 to 5 job, right?
A little bit. So when I graduated from university, my first job that I had was at a small branding and communication studio. And at the time, like right out of school, I was working there 2 days a week on contract. And so it started like as like a very small thing. And actually that first summer that I graduated, I worked at another studio as well. So I was working at two
Hmm.
studios, both 2 days a week. And then kind of like end of summer came around and I realized I should pick one and try and make it like a 4 day a week kind of thing. But I never, so I worked at the studio for 3 years, and I never had like a full 5 day week. I always worked
Oh,
four
that's
days a week.
really interesting.
Yeah, it was like the first big kind of like job that I had, and it was awesome that it was 4 days a week.
Interesting. Okay, so you've been there for a while. What made you decide you want to go freelancing?
Um, a whole bunch of things. I feel like it was like all these little signs. Part of it was seeing, when I was working at the studio, I was doing a lot of Webflow development. Like I had done, I think like 20 sites in a year. My last year that I was there, like just like the volume of work that I was doing with Webflow was huge. And I was starting to be more involved in the community and see people who were freelancing and were bringing in more of an income than I was,
By the
and
way,
even
when you
seeing
say
more
involved in
videos.
the community, is you mean specifically Twitter?
I mean, at that point in time, the Webflow Facebook group,
Okay, interesting.
yeah,
Okay, that's very interesting.
which
Okay,
has
so
turned into something else entirely
okay, okay,
now.
I'd love
But
to dive into that. But okay, so you're working at a company, you're doing
yeah,
Webflow projects, but you're also active in the community, and you're like, these people are there's a lot of opportunities out there. These guys are
yeah.
making more money
I
than
was
me.
I was starting to see like folks like you and Peyton Clark Smith, and I think even Timothy Ricks at that time, although I know he works agency side, and just starting to see these like really kind of like Webflow rock stars who were building businesses around it. And that kind of like planted the seed in my mind of like, oh, okay, like maybe this is something I should start doing. And like also 3 years being at a job, it was starting to feel like, okay, something needs to change. Either I need to change my role or go somewhere else or start freelancing. Just like I needed to do something different in general. And then it was kind of a combination of pandemic and life plans and other things that really were eventually like that impetus for me fully leaving, which was
It
fun
wasn't
because
it
I didn't.
wasn't a transition. It was just like one day, here's me, I'm leaving, I'm quitting, I'll figure it out. Or was it kind of like, hey, let me check out this side hustle with one client, see how it goes, and then make a decision?
Yeah, it was a really interesting time, and I think I'm kind of lucky at the timing of when I started freelancing. Um, so very early pandemic, kind of like first 2 weeks, I had been planning to take a 3 week break. And so at my studio job, I was like rushing through all of my work, trying to get everything done before I was going on this trip. And then the border closed the week that we were supposed to go, and we didn't end up going. So studio work slowed down. I took a break. And then, kind of like longer term over the next few months, there was a lot of slowdown with studio stuff in general, just because I'm sure you remember and
Also
lots of
you
other.
moved, you were working in an office, and all of a sudden you were working from home.
Yes. Yeah. So like moving from office to home. So at that point, like the work that I was getting from the studio, they were like, okay, well, we're going to slow down a bit. Like we probably don't have 4 days for you. We probably have like two. And so I had taken that time to put a portfolio together, and also start figuring out how to get freelance work. I was like on Upwork and trying to like ask friends what to do. And like I had no success on any freelance platform.
Interesting.
But eventually, after just like telling people, I have some capacity, um, my first freelance job was actually a referral from my then boss. And then I had referrals from like previous colleagues and other folks just who knew that like I had a little bit more capacity. And then I made that more formal. It was kind of, there was like a whole bunch of things. I had my 3 year review also at the studio, and that conversation brought about like, I think I'm going to go independent instead of staying here.
Interesting. It's so just want to kind of like reflect back maybe to
Yeah.
people listening to this, what I've heard, because it's actually pretty similar to a lot of my journey, which is not leaving in one day from zero to something, but actually transitioning, like lowering your capacity at your full-time job to, 2 days a week, and then using that time to look for new opportunities, not while you're like scrambling and have no income whatsoever. And also having people that you work with, whether it's your boss or other colleagues, actually being the network of people who worked with you in the past. They know that you're doing good work. They know that you're trustworthy, and they will actually recommend you to other people. I think that's really, really cool. I saw on your Twitter, and again, we're going to dive into the Twitter in a second. Um, but I saw that you wrote lovely notes about your clients. Like, I love my clients. They're inviting me to parties. And that's also something that I it resonates with me, because I also love my clients and they would invite me to parties. But I do think that it's very uncommon. I mean, there's this design cliches of like designers hitting on their client. Oh, they're asking me to make the logo bigger. And I hate that conversation of people trashing their clients. And
Yeah.
how did you like, why do you love your clients? How do you think that you found clients that you love? Not why do you love them? Obviously, they're probably great
Yeah.
people, but what do you think makes the difference between designers that work with people that they love and designers working with people who they find very frustrating? Like, how do you find the people that you love?
Yeah, it's been like a wild spectrum. I think because I had that studio experience, I saw this kind of seed planted of working with value aligned clients. So when you're first talking to someone, figuring out like, do they match your vibes? Are they working towards something that's aligned with your values? And so that kind of like baseline was always in the back of my mind. And part of the reason why I was keen on freelancing was that I love talking to people. I want to be involved with clients. Even when I was at my previous jobs, like I wanted to be in meetings, I wanted to be talking to people. And when I wasn't, I've just felt like there was a disconnect of, I want to hear it directly from a client. I want to talk to them. I want to go through concepts. And so that was always something that I really enjoyed. And part of the reason why freelance was appealing to me so that I could be more involved with my clients. But in terms of finding people who I get along with, I think a lot of it is mindset because I also really don't appreciate those conversations from other designers where they're trashing on their clients because someone has trusted you with their brand and their business and they want your help to make it better. And I don't think that that's a light responsibility that anybody hands away. And so I take that kind of into my heart a little bit and know that this person has sought me out for partnership and I need to be the person that they need. And so like varying levels of that, but um in general, I think I have a genuine desire to help people in their business and understand what they're trying to do, and what they want out of this. And so I don't know. I really want to deliver on that. And sometimes like personalities clash, and you don't like
Yeah,
absolutely love every
did
single
you have
client.
these situations where you were frustrated or you realized maybe too late that you're not really aligned on values? Did that happen to you?
Yeah, I think especially in the first year. The first year of freelancing was just learning at every single corner and turn, and was really figuring out what types of personalities I liked working with, what industries I liked working with. And there was a few in that first year that I realized, like this is not the type of person that I want to work with, um, either based on their industry or just like their personality type that I've like started to identify more with more experience. And it's a really hard thing because I am someone who like wants to be a people pleaser and deliver really high quality work. And whether it's communication difficulties of someone not responding on time or being unkind in their communication or just not having clear goals. Those are kind of like the biggest things that have led to conflict. And it doesn't happen often, but it's always tricky to deal with.
Yeah. So let's talk
What
about
about
freelance.
you?
Like
Like, what is that? Go ahead.
for me, I
Yeah, like, how did you learn that?
I made a lot of mistakes. I mean,
Yeah.
I yeah, I initially I made a lot of mistakes before I realized the number one, what are the red flags, and how to better communicate expectations and just realize that if we don't have the same expectations, and it's I really subscribe to there's an article or a blog post from Seth Godin. I don't know if you're familiar with him. That he said basically there's like three types of relationships between a freelancer and a client, which is either freelancer is the expert and he tells the client what we're going to do, or the client makes all the decision and the freelancer just executes, or collaboration and they're working on it together. All three of them are valid types of relationships as long as the two sides agree that they are, on that this is the relationship. Now I think that most of the times when frustration happens is when, for example, clients thinks I'm making all of the decision and designer thinks I'm making all of the decisions, or we're collaborating, and then there's a mismatch and there's frustration. I'm for the collaboration. I don't want to make all the decision myself. I want to collaborate, and I want to make sure that the people I work with also want to collaborate. If they don't, I can definitely guide them towards people who either want to make all the decision or would like to receive all the directions from the client, because there are people who are comfortable in each of these three types of relationships. So that's how I
Yeah,
think.
I would say that's really accurate. All of my conflicts that I've ever had with clients have been a mismatch of expectations on those types of relationships
Yeah.
of someone wanting to make all the decisions and I'm wanting to be more collaborative, or someone wanting to make no decisions at all. And yeah, that's just like a really accurate reflection, I
Yeah.
think.
It's a good framework to just, it's been helpful.
Yeah.
So let's talk about
Yeah.
Twitter. Like, is Twitter for you just for fun? Is this like a business thing? Is this like, how do you think about this? Because you're super active,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people know you because of Twitter, at least in the Webflow community. So how do you think about Twitter?
Yeah, I think for a long time I didn't think about it as a business thing. I only got on Twitter I got on Twitter on my first year freelance anniversary. So my entire first year of freelancing, I was not on Twitter. And I think it was partly FinSuite live streams were talking about being on Twitter, and just the Webflow community in general. I was starting to see be more active there. So I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever, I'll sign up." And I think because I work alone, I'm in my office by myself largely all day long, unless I'm talking to clients. I started to treat Twitter like my coworkers,
Mm.
and started to treat it like interacting with people in my day that weren't work wise. It was kind of like that water cooler chat, or going to take a coffee break. And instead of doing that, I would just like jump on Twitter and see what was going on. And I think the benefit there was that there was a lot of people working on Webflow projects and design in general, that it was a really active community, and I was learning things about like new announcements from Webflow and just like from their team, but also other freelancers, that I was like, oh, this is a really fun place to be. Like, I'm enjoying my time here. But the longer that I've been on Twitter, the more inquiries for work I've received, from people saying, "Hey, I've been following you for a while," or "I really enjoyed the content that you've put out," and things like that. And like, I had no content plan. I was just like tweeting about things as I was working, and that seemed to resonate with people. And I've actually gotten quite a few clients of people who first saw me on Twitter, and that's kind of like shifted my mind to think like, oh, this is kind of business marketing.
Okay, so the question now is kind of similar to YouTube for me, which was YouTube started as a fun thing for me, but then when I transitioned my business, it's actually, oh, now it's my marketing channel. And that kind of puts stress, or whenever time a hobby turns into something that you depend on, whether it's doing design for fun and now you're doing it for a livelihood, it kind of adds, I don't know if it's stress to it, but now you feel obliged to do it. So do you feel about that? Do you now feel like, oh my God, I didn't tweet today. I didn't tweet enough this week. I got to do it. Do you have that kind of stress, or you're still like, just like, it's for fun?
It's honestly, it's pretty low key in my mind. I am conscious of the fact that when I'm more active online, I'm more visible, and that leads to more inquiries. So I do try to be like some kind of like baseline active on Twitter.
But it's not on your calendar. Oh, I
But
have to do it today.
yeah, but like, I don't have a content calendar. I have no plan of what I'm talking about. But I do try to have kind of like an internal filter whenever I'm posting something. Like, is this helpful? Something like, not everything I post is helpful, but if I'm tweeting something out and I'm kind of doubting it, it's like, well, why am I putting that out there? Is someone going to see this and feel bad? Like, I never want to tweet things about my clients that they would see and feel bad about, or think like, oh, was that about me? Like, I want the things that I put out there to be like either
My God,
positive or
by the
like
way,
commiseration with other freelancers. Yeah.
I have seen somebody tweet like trashing, not trashing, but talking badly about a client on Twitter. And that has been somebody that I have been working with. And I've wondered, are they tweeting now about me? And I don't know if they did or not. I don't know if
Yeah,
they
like,
did or not. But let me tell you, I am not sure about working with that freelancer again.
oh
I'm
yeah,
really mindful about
it
that.
does not feel good.
Yeah.
No. And like, I know how hurt that I would feel if I saw someone tweet something that I thought was about me that was a negative thing. Like, I will sing people's praises. I will talk about how wonderful my clients are, how wonderful my collaborators are, but I don't want to put anything out there that would make someone feel hurt if they thought that it was about them. Like, that's not productive or helpful or kind. And I don't want to be doing that. And sometimes you like put something out that's like a little bit of like a commiseration thing. You're just like, oh, like, ha ha ha, freelancing is so funny. And like, I think those things can be kind of fun as long as like no one is the butt of that joke.
What about putting yourself out there on all platforms? Oh, now I got to be on Instagram. I got to be here. I got to be there. I got to. Do you have that kind of stress, or you're like, things are working fine? I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, Instagram was the first platform that I was on when I was freelancing. I had an Instagram profile that I had built probably like the last year that I was at my studio job, and I created it as kind of like a creative outlet. I was spending way too much time on Instagram, and all I was doing was consuming content. And so I kind of made this little pact with myself that if I'm going to be spending time on Instagram, I also have to be posting things that are like creative or experimental or work stuff or things like that. And so that was kind of like how I started my work Instagram account. And then I kept posting kind of my first year of freelance. But Instagram has become a place that it's just a little bit stressful, I think. It's more higher stakes because you have to create more assets for the content, whereas for Twitter, I can just tweet out words and everything is fine. I was really struggling to keep up with like creating assets and like framing my work, and I realized that like I wasn't getting any inquiries from Instagram, so my time and energy on social media was probably better spent on Twitter.
That's
And I did
interesting.
recently start a TikTok as well because everybody was like freaking out about Twitter dying. And I was like, well, I've kind of been curious about TikTok. Like, let's see what that's like. But I'm not like fully there yet.
But it's good. You're experimenting. So
Yeah, we tried.
you've made the decision, like deliberate decision to stay small. And you have like a wonderful talk from the Webflow conference about that decision, and which I recommend everybody to see. We'll link to that video. Um, I think this is really interesting to talk about this and this decision, and staying small, meaning not hiring to become an agency right now, but just to help people understand from financial perspective. Like a lot of people think, oh, if I'm going to be a freelancer, my income is probably limited. Like, can you give us kind of like a range or a scale of what you've been able to make as a single creator, as a single freelancer, in terms of your business right now?
Yeah, definitely. And I think part of my decision to freelance was specifically to increase my income. And that's been directly tied as I've continued to freelance, feeling pressure to scale an agency. Part of that decision was actually an interview that you did. I think it was with an agency, and it was you talking about freelance versus agency. And there was an income component to that about like making money as that. And that talk was like such a big influence on me because I realized, like I can make a really good income as a freelancer on my own. And I don't have to scale an agency, and scaling an agency might actually be detrimental to that income that I'm trying to make. So yeah, I think in my first year of freelance, my goal was to, I think, surpass my studio income. I was like, I don't know what this is going to be like. I just want to see if I enjoy this and I can make money at it. And the first year that I freelanced, I ended up doubling my income, almost right out the gate. I think it was actually just slightly more than double. And that was not a full, that was a calendar year. It was like a July to a July. I ended up doubling my income. And that for me
Amazing.
was just like a massive win. Primarily because I knew that either working at the studio that I was at or any other agency or studio in my city locally, that was not going to be possible. So that was part of my decision, was like, if I want to grow my income to a point where I can support my family, that's got to be on me. So first year was double. My second year, I can't quite remember, but this year I'll make just about 5 times what I did pre-freelance. And for
Incredible.
me, that's just over $200,000 Canadian.
Amazing.
So I
Congrats.
measure my
Well
income
done.
in Canadian dollars. Thank you. Yeah. So US is a little bit different, but for me, that's just been massive.
It is massive. And So first of all, congratulations. So one thing that I'm wondering.
I can't believe I'm like saying that on the internet.
Yes, well done. I'm doing this every year for like 6 years. I'm going to
Yeah,
record my 2022 video next week. So
love it.
I think it's really helpful for people. I think it's really like transparency in what people can do was really helpful for me, and that's why I try to maintain that. Um, so you've achieved that like amazing milestone. Um, do you like one thing that at least happens for me is every time I reach a goal, I'm like, okay, so like what's next? So I try to do
What's
the
the next
like
one?
think about the next, come up with it just because it's a game, right? You always try to get to the next level. So does that
Mhm.
happen to you? And how does that kind of like, does that conflict with your desire to stay small or a single person? How do you think about that? Like, what are your goals and how do you think about growth?
Yeah, I don't you're right. Like there is always a next goal post. And for me, this goal felt unachievable. Like I had set an income goal this year of $200,000 and I kind of pulled it out of nowhere. Like I did not make that much money last year. And so I was like, okay, well, let's just see if we can do this. It was significantly more than I made last year. And I reached it. And so now, yeah, I'm kind of at that position, like what's next? So actually the last few weeks, like it's December when we were recording this, and I've been reflecting on all that I accomplished this year and figuring out how do I want to run my business next year? What are my goals? And I think there's definitely an income component to that I do want to be charging more and doing larger projects that have higher budgets. But I am also trying to set goals that are more qualitative around the value that I'm bringing. So not only to my clients, but trying to figure out maybe like how I can share more knowledge, because I love freelancing and I've like had such a great time, like both business wise, but also just personally doing this, and trying to figure out how can I bring more value to more people, either with like sharing more about freelancing or I'm in the early stages of figuring that out. So we'll see how that shapes up. But I am trying to set goals both like income based, but also the value that I'm bringing.
Interesting. Okay. I want to ask you about how much do you work? Because you've started out like, oh, I'm working 4 days a week, which sounds incredible. I don't know what you did on the first, if you just had a 3 day week. I see you posting photos of you biking all the time, which I'm super jealous. I also love bicycles and you're in the mountains. So it's like, so on the one hand, I see you talking about like, oh, I'm taking time to do my own things and I'm balanced and that for but then also you're saying like in on Twitter, I am no chill. I'm not going to just sit around and chill. I'm going to do stuff. So like, how do you think about balancing or like, what do your life looks like?
Yeah. I'm hesitant to talk too much about I really hate like hustle culture and like even that word I just don't like. And I'm hesitant to talk too much about like how much I work because I think for a lot of people it would probably be unsustainable. Maybe it's unsustainable for me. I haven't gotten there yet. But I love working and I work all the time. Part of me freelancing is that I just really enjoy what I do. And even like a lot of work that I'll do, I'll plan a day off and then I'll end up in my office because something comes to my mind or I'm interested in it. So in that way, I this probably like a personality thing too. Like I always want to be doing something that's productive. Even when I'm relaxing, I'm like cleaning my house. Like it's it's a whole thing. But um yeah, I my first so when I was working at a studio job, I worked 3 days or 4 days a week. That was a wonderful balance. I started doing this thing called Mountain Mondays with my partner, who was my boyfriend at the time, and now we're married. And we would go out on Mondays because he had Mondays off, and I worked 4 days a week. So we would go to the mountains and ride bikes. And so when I started freelancing, I was like, oh, this gives me more time for that and for training and the rest of it. And my first year of freelance was kind of a juggle. Like the first few months was really chill. I didn't have that many clients because nobody knew that I was freelancing yet. But as I started to get more inquiries, and it shifted to winter time when I wasn't riding my bike as much, I was really just saying yes to everything. And I was working 6 or 7 days a week, really long hours. Um, Partially because I just really wanted to prove it to myself that I could do freelancing and I could put out really good work and my clients could be really happy. And so that first year, like, I don't know if I could do that amount of work again. Like, it was a lot, but I'm so happy that I did it because now I'm at a point where I just took a 3 week break. I went to San Francisco for Webflow Conf. I didn't work a lot during that period. I have more flexibility with my schedule because my rates are higher because I've been doing this longer. So that does give me quite a bit more flexibility. And my goals are to work less. That was my goal this year, was to work 5 days a week, but it ended up turning into 6 because I was like, oh, well, this person came in with a really cool project and I really want to help them. Or like, you're sitting upstairs and you're watching TV and you think, oh, I could tweak that design that I have. And I don't know. So it's a little bit of a balance, but I know that the amount that I don't want to set the amount that I work as a
No,
standard
I
for
think
anybody else because I
I
think
don't
I'm a
think
little bit of a
I don't think that there is a standard. I think people
yeah.
understand for themselves like what their capacities are. In general, I don't think that like, because people are different, right? Like some
Yeah.
people are night people, some people are morning people. I am similar to you. I like to work hard and then take breaks. I don't know. It's kind of like I've seen a comparison to like pro athletes where they work very hard, they train, they play, but then they go off season and they take time to relax. Um, and that's more helpful to them, or their lifestyle is like this versus people who just like have a like calm everyday life, right? So I like this. I like as well kind of like high tension, like short deadlines, just run and then take a break. But I think people figure out on their own how do they operate the best. Yeah,
Hmm.
sometimes they go through burnout and realize, oh, I shouldn't be doing that, right? I
Yeah.
worked in an agency where, like, for a year when I was working there, I used to stay up late, like around 2 a.m., 3 times a week. To me, that was just like, oh, I am not doing that again. So the fact, I mean,
Hmm.
so you sometimes you figure things out by trying, right? And then I guess when you got kids,
Yeah.
then you just got different constraints on you, and you figure out, oh, I can actually do it with less time, right?
And that's a big thing for me right now is that I don't have kids yet. And so part of me working a lot is wanting to work a lot before I have kids, knowing that I'm not going to want to work a lot once I have kids. So
I'll also
yeah, what
say
was that
something
like?
that might be controversial. Of course, doesn't mean anything about you or not. I do think that it is okay, of course, for women as well to, after they have kids, say, you know what, I actually do like to work a lot. Or maybe I just have more fun working a lot than spending with my kids. I don't know if it's politically correct to say it, but I just feel that there are some people who do feel that way, and they will make, and sometimes they will say, no, I need to work less because people are going to think that I'm a bad parent or something like that. And again, they're going to do something because of what other people's expectations are and not what's good for them. Anyway, I just think people need to
Yeah,
figure out
it's a whole thing, but
what works
like
for them.
I've also set myself up like all of the decisions that I've made about my career have been like for a future family. I have set myself up to freelance, to be flexible. I've set myself up to work from home. I increased my income. And all of those choices have been made very specifically knowing that I want to be a mom. And so it's like slow steps all the time to try and get there. And I finally feel like, okay, things are falling into place. I know what I'm doing with my business now. Maybe we can do something next step.
Amazing. So I'm going to bring this conversation to a close. And I'll try to wrap up with, you've said, oh man, the first year has been so many learnings. I know that
Hmm.
the other side of learnings is usually mistakes or failures, because that's how we learn, right? So can you share some of these either learning or mistakes or things that you could have done differently, if you know what you know now, you would have done differently maybe in the first year?
Yeah, I think I would have been more structured with the time that I set out for my schedule. Like we just talked about, I work a ton. I think I should have, in the first year, set out some guidelines for myself around how much I wanted to work, and stuck to that a little bit better. I know that's hard, and like I am where I am now because I worked a lot in the past. But I think for anyone starting freelancing, having a goal in your mind or kind of a boundary of how much you want to be working, I think is really, really helpful. Um, I think pricing wise as well, that first year is so hard, especially if you haven't had insight into how much things cost or what other people are charging. And so in that first year, I think really reaching out to other freelancers or people in your industry to get a sense of pricing. Most people are, I know a lot of times you feel like, oh, well, I'm reaching out to a competitor to get feedback on a quote or something like that. But especially within the Webflow community, I feel like people are very open to give feedback on that kind of thing, because like a rising tide lifts all boats. Mason Poe says that all the time from Edgar Allan. And so I feel like that pricing component in the first year was something that I probably could have really improved on, just because I didn't have experience and I was sometimes afraid to ask. And that's been a massive shift for me in year two and now in year three to feel more confident with there.
Amazing. All right. Grace, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and your insights. I'm sure it's helpful for so many people. So thank you so much. Have good luck in your 2023 crazy goals. And I do hope to see you again here on the channel.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
really
Bye.
appreciate the conversation. Bye.